Have you ever wondered what happens after we die? For most of us, death is the ultimate mystery, one shrouded in fear, uncertainty, and endless questions. But for some, death offers a glimpse into the unknown. Terrence M., a 73-year-old man from Australia, had a near-death experience so profound, it forever changed how he viewed life, death, and the very essence of consciousness. This is his story.
Throughout my life, I often experienced chest pain. Overly ambitious gym workouts or hours of physical labor, like shoveling without warming up, were often the cause. On one occasion, convinced I had angina, chest pain caused by reduced blood flow to the heart, I went to the hospital, only to be reassured that my heart was perfectly fine. This became a pattern, with doctors telling me the same thing each time. But 12 months before my near-death experience, the familiar pain returned. This time, my local doctor detected a slight heart murmur after another round of tests, something attributed to a less than perfectly operating heart valve in my left ventricle. I was told that many people live with murmurs, and it didn't seem serious. So, when the pain periodically returned, I simply rested and breathed deeply, thinking it would always go away. On the morning of December 24, 2015, I decided to do some heavy work in my yard, swinging an axe to cut out invasive tree roots. After an hour or two of vigorous work, I started feeling those familiar phantom chest pains again. I thought, should I go to my doctor? It was Christmas Eve after all, and I didn't want to waste his time with muscle pain. My usual remedy, deep breathing and rest, seemed to work, or so I thought. That evening, however, the pain returned, worse than ever. By the time I was ready for bed, the pain had worsened. When I bent over to unplug my phone charger, I felt it reappear with more intensity than ever. I couldn't lie down without increasing the pain. I couldn't sit up either. Nothing seemed to help. My partner asked if she should call an ambulance, but I refused, thinking it was the same old angina. On the drive to the hospital, I felt the pain getting worse. No position in the car relieved it. When we finally arrived, I struggled to walk the short distance to the emergency ward. As I told the hospital staff I was having an angina attack, they smiled, no doubt having heard it many times before. A passing nurse quickly whisked me into the treatment area, where the doctors performed an ECG. Just as before, they couldn't find anything wrong with my heart, but this time, the emergency doctor wisely decided to keep me overnight for observation. I was given an angina tablet and moved to the X-ray department for further tests. It was now nearing midnight, and I was feeling hopeful that the tests would soon be completed, and I could go home. The emergency staff, celebrating Christmas Eve, were moving about quietly. But just as the X-ray machine began to move, I felt a sudden, crushing pain in my chest. Something was wrong. The pain intensified, far worse than before. I could barely speak. I called for help as the pain became unbearable. The doctors rushed over, and I remember hearing one of them say they needed to act quickly. My vision blurred, my heart stopped. Everything went black. Suddenly, everything changed. There was no more hospital room, no more doctors, no more pain. In an instant, I found myself in a place unlike anything I had ever known. There was only light, a brilliant golden light that stretched endlessly in every direction. It wasn't blinding, but soft, warm, and radiant, as if it were alive. This light was unlike anything I had ever experienced. It wasn't just something I saw, it was something I felt. It was alive. It was filled with warmth, with love, and with peace so complete that words fail to describe it. In that moment, there was no more me. There was no I, no body, no thoughts. There was only this perfect, infinite love. A love so pure and unconditional that it overwhelmed every part of my being. And yet, there was no fear, no anxiety, only joy, only peace. In this place, time didn't exist. It was as though everything that had ever happened, and everything that ever would happen, was happening all at once, yet nothing was happening at all. There was no past, no future, just an eternal now. I felt weightless, as if I were floating, though there was no body to float. It was pure awareness. And in that awareness, there was no separation between me and the light. I was the light. I was the love. I was everything, and everything was me. My consciousness was sharper than it had ever been. It wasn't the type of awareness we know in our everyday lives. It was far beyond that. Every part of me was filled with a knowing that everything was connected, that everything was exactly as it was meant to be. I didn't need to ask questions. I didn't need to think. I just knew. In this state, there were no doubts, no fears, no desires. There was only a sense of being complete, of being home. The feeling of ecstasy was unlike anything I had ever known. It wasn't the fleeting happiness we experience in life. It was something far greater. It was as though every part of my soul was bathed in this divine love. It was a love that asked for nothing and gave everything. A love that was so perfect, so infinite, that it left no room for anything else. I was completely at peace, completely free. There was no struggle, no suffering, no pain, just pure, unending joy. In that place, I was no longer separate from anything. I was part of everything, and everything was part of me. There were no boundaries, no limits. It was all one. I wasn't aware of my body, or the hospital, or the life I had lived. I was aware only of this oneness, this all-encompassing love and light. It was as if I had returned to my true home, a place I had always known but had forgotten. And in that home, I was free. The experience felt as though it lasted forever, yet it was also over in an instant. Time had no meaning here. I don't know if I was in that place for a few seconds or for eternity. It didn't matter. Time was an illusion, something that belonged to the physical world, not this one. In this place, there was only the eternal now. But just as suddenly as it began, it ended. I heard voices, faint at first, then growing louder. What is your name? How old are you? Where do you live? These voices pulled me back into my body, back into the pain, the confusion, the hospital. I didn't want to return. I wanted to stay in that place, in that light. But I was back in the world of form, back in the world of time. As I lay there, I began reflecting on what had just happened. The near-death experience left me with profound questions about consciousness, the afterlife, and the true nature of existence. Was this awareness I experienced always present, even after death? Was the brain simply a medium for our diluted awareness, like how modern multimedia deludes the viewer into absorption? Or was this experience something more? The feelings of divine love and ecstasy were undeniable. It made me wonder, if the brain was shut down, how were these memories laid down and later recalled? Perhaps there's a memory system operating that doesn't depend on the normal functioning of the brain. One thing became clear to me after this experience. Love, unconditional love, was at the core of everything. That love extended far beyond our everyday reality, far beyond our individual selves. My near-death experience raised questions that I continue to explore, but one thing is certain. The fear of death, which haunted me before, is no longer there. Dying now seems natural, something not to be feared. What is there to lose? The constant struggle to protect the ego, money, relationships, all of these must pass in time. In my NDE, I felt none of that. There was only peace and love. So what can we take from this experience? Perhaps it's the idea that death is not the end, but a return to something much greater, something that connects us all.
What did Terrence experience? Was it heaven? Was the overwhelming feeling of peace and unconditional love what many believe to be the presence of God? In the Bible, we hear about such love, a love so profound it surpasses human understanding. In 1 John 4:16, we read, "And so we know and rely on the love God has for us. God is love. Whoever lives in love lives in God, and God in them. Could Terrence have encountered this divine love? An all-encompassing love that asked for nothing in return. A love that fills us with peace, joy, and completeness? It's a love that the Bible tells us is at the very core of God's nature. Terrence described being surrounded by golden light, feeling as though he had left his body and entered a place where time no longer existed. Could this have been a glimpse of heaven? In Revelation 21:23, it says, "The city does not need the sun or the moon to shine on it, for the glory of God gives it light, and the Lamb is its lamp." Could the golden light Terrence saw be the same light described in Scripture, the light of God's glory that illuminates all of heaven? In Terrence's experience, he said he felt no separation, that he was one with the light, one with everything around him. In John 17:21, Jesus prays for all believers to be united with God, saying, "That they may all be one, just as you, Father, are in me, and I in you, that they also may be in us." Was Terrence experiencing the oneness Jesus spoke of, the unity between us and God, a state where there is no separation, only divine connection? Terrence's story challenges us to reflect on these questions. Was his experience a glimpse of heaven? Was the love he felt the presence of God? We may never know for sure, but what do you think? Does Terrence's experience align with your beliefs about God, the afterlife, or unconditional love? We'd love to hear your thoughts. Leave your reflections in the comments below and tell us if you've ever had a similar experience. Your story might just inspire others on their spiritual journey.